You already know. That is the most uncomfortable part of all of this. You do not need someone to tell you that you are capable of more. You do not need a study or a statistic or a philosopher to confirm what you already feel in the quiet moments, the moments between the scrolling and the noise and the carefully maintained distraction of a life kept deliberately too busy to examine itself. You already know. You know what you should be doing. You know the thing you keep putting off. You know the discipline you lack. You know the relationship you have been neglecting. You know the work that is sitting unfinished, the potential that is sitting unused, the version of yourself that you catch glimpses of in your best moments, in your clearest thinking and the dreams you have not yet told anyone about, and then promptly look away from before it can ask anything of you. You already know. Jordan Peterson has spent decades studying the psychology of human potential and human failure. He has sat across from thousands of people in clinical settings, in lecture halls, in conversations that stripped away every comfortable pretense and got to the actual question, the one that lives beneath every human anxiety, every addiction, every inexplicable self-sabotage. Why do people who know better keep doing worse? Why do intelligent, capable, genuinely talented people look up one day and find themselves surrounded by the evidence of their own unrealized potential, like unopened gifts in a room they have been avoiding for years? The answer is not comfortable. The answer never is. But the answer, if you are willing to actually receive it, is the beginning of everything. Stay with me. His name was Michael, 32 years old, a software engineer in Seattle with a mind that, by every objective measure, was exceptional. His colleagues knew it. His managers knew it. His professors had known it years before. He was the person in every room who saw the solution first, who asked the question that reframed the entire problem, who could hold more complexity in his head simultaneously than most people could manage with a whiteboard in 3 hours. He was also the person who went home every night, opened his laptop, and watched television until 2 in the morning instead of working on the application he had been designing in his head for 3 years. The application was extraordinary. He knew it was extraordinary. It solved a real problem in a genuinely elegant way that no existing product had managed. He had the skills to build it. He had the time, not as much as he wanted, but enough. He had done the mental architecture 100 times in the shower, on his commute, in the margins of meetings where his mind was already somewhere better. What he did not have was the ability to sit down and begin, and so he watched television and he played games. He told himself he would start when he had more time, when the project at work slowed down, when he felt less tired, when he felt more inspired, when the conditions were better and the timing was right, and the moment finally arrived that was clearly the right moment to begin. That moment never arrived. 3 years became 4. 4 became 5. The idea, which had felt urgent and vital and ready to be born, started to feel like it belonged to a younger version of him, like something that had passed its window, like a door that had been open and was now, quietly, imperceptibly, almost completely closed. Michael is not a cautionary tale about talent. There is no shortage of talent in the world. There is an extraordinary surplus of talent in the world. Michael is a cautionary tale about the gap between knowing and doing, between potential and expression, between the person you are capable of being and the person you choose every single day, in 1,000 tiny decisions to actually be. And Peterson would tell you, and this is the part that lands like a fist, that the gap is not accidental. The gap is chosen, not consciously, not maliciously, but chosen nonetheless, in the accumulation of every moment where you chose the easier thing, the more comfortable thing, the thing that demanded less of the part of you that knows what it could do if it was willing to try. Let us talk honestly about why. Why do we do this? Why do human beings, intelligent, capable, often deeply aware human beings, consistently choose the path that leads away from their own potential? Peterson has an answer that is more honest than most people are comfortable with. He says that in many cases it is not because people do not know what they should do. It is because they are afraid of what happens if they actually try. Think about that for a moment. Sit with it. If you try, really try, with everything you have, with no more excuses between yourself and the full measure of your effort, then you have to find out what you are actually capable of, and that is terrifying, because the answer might be less than you hoped. The application might not be as good as it was in your head. The novel might not be as profound. The business might not work. The relationship might not survive your honesty. And if you fail after truly trying, you cannot blame the circumstances anymore. You cannot say, "I never really gave it everything." You cannot preserve the comfortable fiction that the potential is still there, intact and unspent, waiting for the right moment. The right moment will have come. And what you built with it will be the record. That is what most people are actually avoiding, not the work. The verdict. This is what Peterson calls the terrible responsibility of being a conscious creature. The awareness that the distance between your current life and your best life is, at some fundamental level, a series of choices. That every day of avoidance is a day of choosing. That the comfort of the unlived life and the warm, low-friction safety of potential that has never been tested comes at a cost. And the cost is paid in time, in years, in the slow accumulating, almost imperceptible dimming of the version of you that was possible. The struggle is not external. The economy is not the problem. The lack of time is not the problem. The circumstances, as genuinely difficult as circumstances can be, are not the problem. The problem is the war being waged inside every person between the part that knows what it is capable of and the part that will do almost anything to avoid finding out. Peterson almost broke. In the mid-2010s, he was a professor at the University of Toronto, respected, published, a clinical psychologist, with a genuine reputation in his field, but largely unknown outside academic circles. A man who had spent decades thinking, writing, studying the deepest questions about human existence and meaning, and in sharing that work with university students and clinical clients and an audience of perhaps a few thousand people. He was also, during this same period, watching a cultural and political moment unfold that he found deeply alarming. He believed that certain ideas about identity, about compelled speech, about the architecture of meaning in human life, were moving in a direction that he thought was genuinely dangerous, and he had a choice. He could say nothing. He was tenured. He was comfortable. He had a career to protect and a family to consider and every reasonable incentive to keep his head down and let someone else be the one to say the uncomfortable thing. Or he could say what he actually thought. He chose to speak. He made a series of YouTube videos sitting in his office, speaking directly into a camera about the things he had been thinking for decades. Not polished, not produced, not engineered for viral performance. Just a man with ideas speaking honestly, betting that the ideas were worth the cost. The videos spread. Millions of people watched them. Not because the production was impressive, but because the content was, and there is no other word for it, true. Because Peterson was saying, in clear and demanding language, the things that people had been thinking without permission, the things that had no comfortable home in the existing public conversation, the things that named the gap between who people were and who they could be, and refused to let the naming be soft or comfortable or easy to put down. He became one of the most influential public intellectuals in the world. Not because he was given a platform, because he built one, because he was willing to say the thing with his whole name and face, attach to it and let the consequences come. The turning point was the decision to speak, to stop waiting for the moment that felt safe, to understand at the cellular level that the safe moment was never coming and that the cost of silence was higher than the cost of being wrong in public. That decision is available to you. The first lesson: set your house in order before you criticize the world. This is perhaps Peterson's most repeated and most important instruction. Before you look outward at the systems, the structures, the injustices, the failures of the world around you, look inward. Look at the room you have not cleaned, the relationship you have not repaired, the habit you have not addressed, the life you have not yet taken responsibility for. This is not a conservative or a progressive idea. It is a deeply human one. The most effective way to improve the world is to improve your own domain first. Not because the world's problems are not real. They are devastatingly real. But because you cannot think clearly, act effectively, or contribute meaningfully to the larger problems while your own house is in disorder. Michael, the engineer, with the unbuilt application, spent years analyzing what was wrong with the technology industry, with the culture, with the incentives and the systems that rewarded the wrong things. He was not entirely wrong, but he was also sitting in a cluttered apartment at 2 a.m, not building the thing he knew he could build. Fix what you can fix, right now, in the sphere you actually control. And watch what happens to your clarity, your energy, and your capacity to act on the larger things when the foundation of your own life is genuinely in order. The second lesson, tell the truth or at least don't lie, Peterson, makes a distinction. That sounds simple and is not. There is a difference between telling the full truth, which is genuinely difficult and not always possible in every situation, and not actively lying. The latter is always available, and the refusal to stop lying, he argues, is one of the primary mechanisms by which people destroy their own lives and contribute to the destruction of the world around them. We lie in small ways constantly. We tell our partners we are fine when we are not. We tell our managers we understand when we do not. We tell ourselves we are happy with the choices we are making when every quiet moment confirms that we are not. We construct and maintain narratives about our lives that protect us from the discomfort of the truth, and in doing so, prevent us from taking the action that the truth would require. The lie feels like protection. It is actually a cage. Every lie you tell about your own life is a wall between where you are and where you could go, and the cumulative architecture of those lies built over years, reinforced daily, becomes the prison that people eventually call their personality, their fixed reality. The way things are. Peterson says that precision in speech, being honest, being specific, being willing to name things, clearly is one of the most powerful tools available to a person trying to change their life, because you cannot address what you cannot name, and you cannot name clearly what you have agreed, through habitual dishonesty, not to see. Say the true thing to yourself first, about the gap, about the choice, about what you are avoiding and why. The third lesson, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. This is the lesson that should be displayed on every phone screen in the world, because the phone screen is precisely where this lesson is most frequently and most viciously violated. We live in the most comparison-saturated environment in human history. A curated, optimized, algorithmically amplified stream of other people's achievements, appearances, relationships, and successes flowing past us at a speed and density that our psychology was never designed to process. And we measure ourselves against it constantly, automatically, usually, without noticing we are doing it, and the measurement produces one of two equally destructive outcomes. Either we feel inferior, less than, behind, inadequate in ways that feel fundamental rather than circumstantial, and we give up before we begin, because the gap between where we are and the highlight reel of someone else's life is simply too discouraging to confront. Or we feel superior, better than, ahead of, validated by the comparison, and we stop growing because the comparison flatters us, and flattery is the enemy of progress. Peterson says the only meaningful comparison is the one you make with yourself. Are you better today than you were yesterday? Not better than the person on the screen. Not better than the colleague who got the promotion. Better than the version of you that woke up yesterday, made yesterday's choices, lived yesterday's life. Small improvements compounded daily across the entire canvas of a human life produce outcomes that look like miracles from the outside and feel like discipline from the inside. The fourth lesson. Life is suffering, and the meaning is in how you bear it. This is the most difficult lesson. The one that separates Peterson's philosophy from every comfortable self-help framework that promises transformation through positivity and ease. Life involves genuine suffering. Inevitable, inescapable, not your fault suffering, loss, illness, betrayal, failure, the death of people you love, the death of versions of yourself you are not done being yet. Suffering is not the exception. Suffering is the structure within which every human life unfolds, but the suffering is not the problem. The problem is the suffering without meaning, the suffering that has no narrative, no purpose, no place in a larger story of who you are becoming because of what you are going through. Peterson found this truth in the darkest possible personal circumstances. His wife was diagnosed with a rare form of kidney cancer. His daughter developed a severe form of juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. He went to Russia for a radical medical treatment. He came back diminished in ways that were visible to everyone who knew him. He came back anyway, and he kept speaking, and he kept writing, and he kept showing up to the conversation that he believed mattered, carrying the full weight of everything that had happened without pretending it had not happened. Not because the suffering made him stronger in some simple, motivational poster sense, because he had a framework for understanding it, because he believed, and had spent his career articulating why he believed, that the person who can bear the heaviest load without being broken is not the person who was spared the load. It is the person who voluntarily chose to carry something meaningful, and discovered in the carrying what they were actually made of. Want to ask you to do something uncomfortable. I want you to imagine yourself at the end of your life, not as a morbid exercise, as the most clarifying act of imagination available to a human being. Imagine yourself looking back from a place where there are no more choices to make, where the account is complete, where every decision you made with your days is visible in its full, accumulated consequence. What do you see? Not the achievements, not the titles or the money or the things the world measures and records. What do you see in the space between what you were capable of and what you actually did with that capability? What do you see in the gap? Peterson has said, and this is the sentence I want you to carry out of this video and keep somewhere you will see it, that the purpose of life is to find your burden and carry it as nobly as possible, not to avoid the burden, not to minimize the weight, not to optimize for comfort or ease or the maximum accumulation of pleasant experiences, to find the burden that is genuinely yours, the work, the relationships, the responsibilities, the calling that belongs specifically to your life and no other, and to carry it with everything you have. Michael eventually built the application, not at 32, at 37, 5 years later than he could have. In the months after his father died and the grief stripped away every comfortable pretension he had been hiding behind, he built it because the loss made the question undeferrable. It made the gap visible in a way that could not be unseen. He told me, and I want you to hear this clearly, he told me that the hardest part was not the building. The hardest part was accepting that the 5 years were gone, that the version of the application that could have existed at 32 would never exist, that the only version he could build now was the one he could build at 37, and then he built it anyway, because the alternative, and another 5 years, another decade, another iteration of the gap growing quietly in the dark, was a cost he finally understood he could not afford. You understand that cost too. I know you do. You have always known. Here is what Peterson would tell you to do, not the inspiring abstract version. The specific actionable actually do this version. Today, not someday, not when the circumstances improve. Today, identify the thing you are avoiding. The specific thing. The application. The conversation. The habit. The decision that you have been living around for too long. Name it clearly. Write it down if you have to. The naming is the beginning, then make it smaller. Not because the big version does not matter. It does, but because the reason you are not doing the big version is that it is too large to begin. So begin with the version that is small enough to do today. 1 paragraph, 1 phone call, 1 hour, 1 honest conversation with yourself in the mirror that you have been avoiding because you already know what it will say. And then do that small thing before you do anything else tomorrow morning, before the phone, before the news, before the noise of the day assembles itself around you and takes the choice away. Because the morning is yours if you take it before it is taken, and the morning is the best version of you, the version with the most clarity, the most will, the least accumulated resistance, and that version deserves to be spent on the thing that matters most. Peterson says that if you work on yourself with genuine seriousness for even a year, really work, honestly confront what you are avoiding, take responsibility for the gap, make the small daily choices in the direction of who you could be rather than who you have been, the person you will be at the end of that year will be almost unrecognizable to who you are today, not because transformation is easy, because it is possible, genuinely, specifically, practically possible for every person watching this right now, including you, especially you. You already know. You have always known. The only question that has ever actually mattered, is what you are going to do with the knowing. Today, not tomorrow. Not when the conditions improve. Not when the fear goes away, because the fear will never go away entirely, and waiting for its absence is just another name for the gap. Today, clean one thing, fix one thing, say one true thing, do one small piece of the work that the best version of you would be proud of, and then do it again tomorrow, and the day after, until the gap closes, until the potential becomes expression, until the version of you that you have been catching glimpses of in your best moments is no longer a glimpse, it is you. If this reached the place where your excuses live, share it with someone who needs the same confrontation. Subscribe for more content that does not comfort you. It demands something from you. And tell me in the comments, what is the one thing you have been avoiding that you are committing to starting today? Name it. That is where the gap begins to close.